Hello and welcome back to the stream. Welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast and live stream. Join us on Twitch if you want to participate live, or like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're following along on YouTube. I hope you are. I hope you're finding something cool and exciting. I hope you're finding philosophy as fun, exciting, meaningful, interesting as I find it. And if you are, welcome back to the channel. So let's recap where we are so far. We have been trying to understand the big question: what the heck is philosophy? And we have this drop for that. Oh God, already off the bat.
What in the heck are we talking about here?
There we go. What in the heck is philosophy? What does it do for us? How do we use it in everyday lives? And then how do we relate back to philosophy and master it ourselves? Okay, and we've been using the Parmenides to ask that question, answer that question, and discover all the other puzzles that are involved within philosophy and within answering that particular question. So that's what we have been doing on this series. And we have come up with a bunch of really cool quotes from the text that outline exactly what we are involved in. So the big one: collect thyself, know thyself. The thyself from the know thyself maxim that the ancient Greeks lived by. Collect thyself together by exercising more in that way which appears useless to the multitude, and is called by them empty talk. For if you do not, while you are still young, the truth will utterly elude thee. So some sort of philosophy involves collecting yourself together, thyself, the highest part of thyself, through some sort of exercise, through some method. And we have discovered that method is the dialectic. And there are two categories: Zeno's dialectic and there is Parmenides' dialectic. And there are things involved with doing that. And we have this quote here: we're to permit the ideas of real beings to be. Number one, keeping our mind fixed on objections. Number two, defining each one of each particular idea. Number three, that's understanding that we're wanting. And then number four, allow the idea of each one of the real beings to always be of the self. Once again, this is the power of dialectics. Right, so we have to permit the ideas of the real beings to be. That's a big one. That's a starting point. This is what we've seen Parmenides call the greatest human puzzle, is if you either don't permit them to be or you don't think they are knowable to us in some way, you might not even start this exercise, which we call the power of the dialectics. That's the first hurdle we have to overcome. And then we have, with that as kind of a precondition or a starting point, we have a triad that follows, keeping in mind the objections, defining each one of the ideas, that being, and then applying it to the self. Now, we have an example of one of those objections that will come up for us in that process because it happened for Socrates. But we also see what it's like to have mastered this dialectic and be using it in our everyday life, as Parmenides is doing. Parmenides is a kind of example what it would be like to be living that, to be a Gandalf figure, to come back to other young philosophers, human beings who are beginning this quest, this human quest, the archetype of the hero's journey, and saying to them,
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
That's Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, right? And he points out this counterattack objection that comes up for Socrates, giving heed to the opinions of human beings. It's a big one, right? Because humans might not have knowledge of the realm of being, or above that, the ultimate, the oneself. And of course, opinions are not what we're after. Philosophy is not a game of opinions. It's a game through understanding, or dianoia, using the method of the dialectic to gain knowledge. Yes, last time we were talking about what exactly knowledge is. These ideas that we are wanting to behold are all the objects of knowledge. And Parmenides went ahead and gave us another clue. By the way, it's all one thing. So we used that clue to come up with a whole bunch of different insights and understandings last time. That was a lot of fun. There's a lot involved in that. And one of the other difficulties is this one that Zeno tells us, that many are ignorant that without this dialectic through the beings, it's impossible to hold on to the truth. So we want to know the truth without intellect, or the Greek word for that, if you want to use it, is nous. Nous, 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 nous. Okay. And here we have the quote about helping others. It falls to the natural ability, the ability to the individual with a good disposition. We have to be doing it in good faith. To be learn that there is a certain kind of each idea and that of self-ousia, according to self. Big word, ousia. And you'll have greater admiration after making that discovery to teach yet another person how to thoroughly well distinguish all these particulars in a sufficiently efficient way. So, self-ousia has been what we were looking for, and we discovered it at the end of the first hypothesis. Self-ousia, itself. Self according to self is that expression that means definition, defining the thing according to itself, not according to how it functions with others. So the expression is self according to self. That's a big one, because definition is the first step in the dialectic, of which there are 4 steps within 2 overarching categories, if your topic exists or if it doesn't. And of course, existing, we are seeing more and more of what it means to exist, to do with being, to do with knowledge, to do with all of the self ideas. And that was a really fun session yesterday. So, here's Socrates saying the same thing. This ousia self is woven together into the ideas, the selves, demonstrate in detail about the ideas which we grasp through by the activity of the logos. Thank you, Socrates. So, doing all right? And we recognize that the last of the 4 categories of the dialectic, which goes in our 4 skill tree, developing skill trees, is ousia, or like ousia, which is other back to self. Take your insights from your activity of the dialectic and apply it back to what you've already done. Apply it back to the subject. And we've been doing that with the opening of the Parmenides. We went through it once, and then we gained a whole bunch of new understandings and insights, and we leveled up, which has that noise. And now we're using that and taking it back to the opening to see if we can gain more clues and see more of what was there in the beginning. That's been a lot of fun and very productive, I think. That's where we were. And now in the opening, we've gone through the introduction. We've seen a lot of literary devices that are mythological or representing the principles and the ideas of the logos, the ideas in being, or the oneself, through narrative, through characters, through objects, through places. We saw a bunch of those. Again, the more that we see it, the more we'll be able to go back and see more in what was there. It's like watching a Christopher Nolan movie. You've ever seen Memento? You gotta watch it, and then you go back and you gotta watch it again, and you'll see more. Same with Inception. Okay, so we're doing that. We're seeing some new things, making new connections. We are weaving it together with the new weapon we have at our disposal. The new, of course, the philosophical journey is the archetype. It's not actually a weapon. It's a tool. It's a skill set of the mind, which we're calling the sewing needle of infinite truths. Weaving the pieces together to create what? New insights, new understanding, new connections. So, We're at the part in the opening where Parmenides is addressing Socrates and his problem, and he is nailing down what way of thinking Socrates is currently in, so he can address him fairly as an adventurer, as a Gandalf
I'm
figure.
looking for someone to share in an adventure.
This kind of fellow. So he's used a analogy. This is key in philosophy because it's through analogy that we can gain understanding of the greater through an example of the lesser that follows the same relationships or similar relationships. You want to understand how a king relates to his people, you might use a metaphor of how a shepherd relates to a sheep. And he is using the metaphor of master and slave. In the ideal realm of being, that kind of relationship, lordship and stewardship, would be to do with the benefiting of the selfhood of the lord being served, and the selfhood of the steward being nurtured and encouraged and developed. Kind of like Parmenides is doing, right? With Socrates. But he is saying, well, if you think that knowledge of the realm of beings is completely separate from what we do in our physical world, in the world of becoming, very rarely, if at all, you see a master and slave in which there is that kind of truly beneficial to the selfhood of each. Therefore, yes, and we give a thumbs down because we rarely see that. Therefore, what would be the implications that follow from that way of thinking? Okay, that's what we're doing now. If that's the case, Socrates, if you think this way, which, by the way, we can identify as that great puzzle. In fact, we should make that one of our special quotes because we keep going back to that. The greatest puzzle. Which is it's a really big quote. That if someone should say that the ideal selves cannot be properly known, even if they're speaking to an experienced dialectician, they may remain unpersuaded. That's one of the big puzzles. So, if there is this disconnection between our world and the world of being, as demonstrated by slaves and masters not really benefiting the selfhood of each other as they would in the realm of being, then there is no connection. Never the twain shall meet. You can't know the knowledge that the master in the realm of being has, because otherwise you'd be using it. So it's unknowable. The knowledge that exists in being is unknowable to us. That's a way of thinking about reality. Maybe you know these people. Maybe you feel this way. Maybe you felt this way for years. Maybe it comes and goes during the day. Right? It is unknowable to us. Which is, of course, he identified it as the greatest problem. But now, after seeing where he is, he's pushing the implications. This is what would follow. Okay? Defining his position, giving a demonstration, and then pushing the implications. Does that fit into our quadrad of definition, demonstration, division, synthesis, analysis? Let's try it. Did he define his position? Did he give a demonstration of that position through a metaphor? Is he giving a division into the implications or the results that follow? In hopes that we will synthesize that together to make a conclusion or go back to the subject and see it in a new way. Ousia, to see what was there in a new way. This dialectic process that we go through in exploring any topic, or, as Parmenides is demonstrating, helping somebody else, That dialectic process is the essence of reality, is the human quest. It's the same principle in the microcosm as exists in the macrocosm. What is it? To unfold and then use the understanding that you've developed, the logos you've developed, to return back to the original thing, to see it in a new way. Could this explain the nature of reality, the nature of humanity? If we are the self and our job is to return to the self, and our way of doing that is through this activity that many call empty talk and useless, but we call it the dialectic, and Zeno, Socrates, and Parmenides say it's only through that way that we can know the truth. If we're from the self, return to the self through the self logos, do we return to see what was there in a new way? This goes back to our famous Buddhist or saying, when I started Buddhism or Taoism I think it is, when I started to see the Tao, before I started Taoism, mountains were mountains, rivers were rivers, and then when I learned Taoism, rivers were no longer rivers and mountains no longer mountains. But when I knew the Tao, mountains were once again mountains and rivers, rivers. Okay, we're going through a process to return back to what was there in the beginning, but you see it in a new way. For them, through the Tao, but what we would call the self-logos. Okay? Maybe they could add the self-logos to their understanding of the Tao. That would be fun. That'd be a fun conversation to have. If you're having that conversation, if you know a Taoist in your life, I encourage you to have that conversation and share how it goes. Can we connect with each other, even though we're from different backgrounds, because we have something shared in common? What is that? The logos. That's the significance of understanding and knowledge. It's open to all. Different to beliefs and opinions or prejudices or faith. These are divisive. Not everyone has the same belief, whereas everyone has the same understanding if understanding is universal. Same with knowledge. Which is, of course, is good because we want to know thyself, not have an opinion of thyself, right? So, division of what are the implications that follow from Socrates' position. So hopefully he will see it in a new way, synthesize it, and analyze his position. Here is your position. Here's a demonstration. Here is the results that follow. Now, take all of that, synthesize it, and bring it back to the start like ousia. Synthesis and analysis. What's that? Ousia. Through what? The dialectic. You coming back with what in your back pocket? With the logos in your back pocket. Makes all the difference, right? Makes all the what? Difference. What do you mean by difference? Oh, that's one of the Selfer terms. I know about difference. Let me get into the first hypothesis. See, it's cool. It's kind of a self-contained system. The highest words that we use, we also define as part of learning the logos. We are defining our key terms. One of the aspects of being a philosophical adventurer. And we have a little picture. No, that's the wrong screen. Here we go. We have a little picture of... These are our notes from last time. Oh, here we go. Here's a little snapshot of what it means to be a philosophical hero. We have our skill trees. We have our questions. We have our key terms. We have our hypotheses. Our questions, key terms, hypotheses, a hierarchical order. These are all in our sacks, in our inventory. We have our skill trees. Can we see ones? Can we see twos? Can we see threes? So we can make new connections. We have our ousia. Everything we do, we turn about to the start. Every experience we have, experiences are dead. I heard someone say once. So why? Well, everything you feel, even with your skin, it's dead skin cells on the surface. Experiences end. Understanding, however, is where you get the benefit from the experiences. So use our logos to turn back upon our experiences. That's Usia. And we have our new weapon in our inventory, the sewing needle of infinite truths. There we go. That's it there. We have a better picture. Whoops. This fellow here. Here he is. Oh, and we had a question. Is there a 5 skill tree? A possible 5 came up last time. We haven't seen many 5s. We haven't seen any 5s, I don't think. Can there be a list of 5s? So keep an eye out for that. You see something that has a list of terms in a hierarchical order. Can you create a question and a hypothesis that it can be seen as a group of 5s? Keep an eye out. And as we do it, we have our glasses on because it affects our vision, how we see. So we're using that new vision to go back to the beginning and see what was there, Lucia, and see if we can gain new insights. That's where we are. So let's jump back into the text with that little introduction. Oh, right. And last time we had a lot of fun. Well, I had a lot of fun, at least. I hope you had fun too. Very, very exciting because we really nailed down what our big questions are after going through the first hypothesis. The big hypothesis. Parmenides' hypothesis on the oneself. Holy crap.
A virtual assistant with a variety of days a week as best I can.
See? It's so amazing. Even my artificial intelligence Jarvis that's supposed to help me with these screens freaks out sometimes. Right? But it's a...
Wow.
That's the right button. So what are we saying wow about?
Wow.
This. Oh, we saw another potential 3 skill tree. Being power activity. We looked at that last time. And if we can use that triad in the most simple way to give a question. 1 is, that's not 1 and not is, but use the logos to understand that puzzle. That's essentially the end of the first hypothesis. Because let's look at how Parmenides introduced what he was going to do. Here we go. I'll play a reality-based game. Begin from myself and the hypothesis of myself. It's his hypothesis by hypothesizing about the oneself and whether it is not, and what must the results be. Okay? What must the results be? That sounds like the implications that follow. Hey, Socrates, you have a certain position that we can't know knowledge. What must the results be? Okay, but also, let's bring that up one more time. The oneself. So he is naming the oneself. The self that is the oneself. Okay, so it is something. But, so we can say it is one. But if we say it is one, there is a way of understanding that statement where you can get rid of both. So it doesn't make sense. But you can solve it using the logos. That's what we're seeing. So a cool way of using this 1 is and logos. And we said, can we see it? Because it's 3 terms. Can we see it in a triad? And we saw, oh, hang on a second. There's a way of understanding 1 as the ultimate of the oneself. There it is. So we pulled up our skill tree. We had a bunch of triads. We had lesser, greater, ultimate. We had, in terms of analogies, and the phi ratio, of course, or the golden ratio is the mathematical representation of this analogy, which is cool if you're into math, or sacred geometry. So we had 1. We had in our 3 skill tree, we had the realms, the realm of becoming. Realm is one of the words we picked up from the text as well. So we're not adding to what's there, we're seeing it there. In fact, maybe I should... Realm... Do we see realm in the opening? Yep. Okay, so let's Here we go. So let's go back to the text to make sure that we're using the logos from the text and we're weaving together the key terms from the text. Oh, actually, we're right there. We were just reading it. It's in the conversation with Socrates about whether we can know what God knows. By the way, who possesses most perfect knowledge more than God? Nobody. Take notice then, is it possible that God can know our affairs by possessing self-knowledge? Why not? Well, Socrates' position is the knowledge of the beings are just for them. Our physical world is disconnected and we have our own knowledge. Like we say what it means to be a good boss, and of course it's not the ideal, but we just make up our own. We don't know the ideal. We don't know what we would be doing ideally, so we just make up our own ways of having slaves and masters. Since it had been agreed to us, O Socrates, that neither do those ideas have the power which they possess in relation to those among us, the world of becoming, nor do we have our knowledge in relation to those in the world of being. But selves exist in relation to each selves in each realm. There's our idea of realm. So, what's that? Ontology, you could call that. It's a funny word. Ontology comes from ontos, which is the Greek word for being. Ontology is the study of what is or what exists. What are the realms that exist? Often you have ontology and cosmology. No, ontology and epistemology. So ontology is ontos, which is from the word being, which is good because one great way of summarizing philosophy is the dialectic on being, and then also on the oneself, Zeno's exercises and Parmenides exercises. So you could say all philosophy is ontos or ontology, but you could also say it's epistemology from pistis, which is the activity of knowing. So what exists is ontology, and what is knowable is epistemology. So you could be stuck where you have the ontology that there is no realm of being. There is no ideal self-beauty or self-knowledge. Or you could have Socrates' problem and be stuck in the realm of epistemology. There is a realm of being, we just can't know it ourselves. Epistemological problem. These are two cool words that you can throw around, have fun with. So if you come across like some really clever academic philosopher, that's an epistemological question. I know what that means. That's Socrates' thing. He didn't know that you could yourself know the realm of being. Or you could say, if you hear a philosopher say, oh, that's an ontological problem. Oh, that's that being, ontos. Yeah. You either think there's a realm of being or you don't. Or you have Parmenides' position where there's one beyond being. So that's some cool words you can throw in there. We wanted to see that realm is in there. Why? Because it's one of our triad skill trees. Our skill trees of 3, which is this one. Whoops. This one here. What are the realms? The realm of becoming, the physical world. The realm of being, the metaphysical. Where the selves are, selfers are. And of course, Parmenides' position, the one that is not one, or is, in that sense. So, Parmenides has given us a puzzle. What do I think myself is? Let's bring it up. He wants to show this. Play a reality game of he's speaking from himself, so it's his. He's really internalized it, hypothesizing about the one self. And then later hypothesis whether it is and where it's not. So this is the one self. So he's saying, by the way, this one self that was in my hypothesis, that I think is the self, is my hypothesis. You can say it's the one that is. Okay. What do you mean by is? All of those self-ver terms we've used in the first hypothesis, it's not that. If you are defining one in relation to any of those, it's a one that's a whole, it's a one that is like something, it's a one in motion, it's a one in rest, it's a one full of parts, then it's not that one either. So it's a one that is, in one way of using the logos, you can say it's not one. In one way of using the logos, you can say it's not is. But we are saying it's the one that is. So solve that puzzle, buddy, is what he says. And we say, yup, we're up to the task. Because
you're a wizard, Harry.
Because we're philosophical adventurers. We're wizards, Harry. And we use these things to do so. So we use that, our new seeing, to nail down our question, which is what? Well, if there is a lesser, greater, and ultimate in terms of analogy, there's a becoming, being in oneself in terms of realms, there's an understanding, a knowing, and a what? What's this one here? If our goal is to know thyself, but knowing pertains to this realm, what the heck is this? How do we know oneself? What? That's the big question. That's what we're after.
What?
So, in the text, we were given... So here's the puzzle. One that is neither one nor is, but use the logos as a key to figure that out. Now, once you figure that out, apply it to these terms. Given this logos, there is neither name. Okay? One of our questions in our question inventory is, what is the significance of names? We've been slowly building that up as we go. What's the significance of having the name of philosophy named properly? It's to do with understanding and knowing, being, and the oneself. These is the object of philosophy. What's the significance of the right name to philosophy? What's the significance for the right name of idea? Because often it's taught as concept. Literally, what we've seen is Socrates' problem. He didn't get that ideas is to grasp or behold the realm of being where all the selves are. Makes it a spiritual or a metaphysical experience, or a mystical experience, you could call it. I like mystical because there's another quote from Socrates in another text where he says, you know that saying from Homer, Thracius bearers are many, or staff bearers are many, but mystics are few. I like that saying because the staff is like the physical expression of what it would mean to be a mystic. Oh, look at that wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry.
He's got a great wizard's staff. He must be a mystic. But even Homer recognized, there's a lot of people who want to give the appearance of being a mystic, but are not themselves a mystic. They don't know how to have that experience of being. Right? And we see this everywhere. People want to appear wise, appear knowing, but might not go through this work that you have to go through. Swim through such a long, a big sea of logos, as Parmenides say, like a racehorse compelled to return to a race. Antiphon, was it Antiphon? Who's relaying this whole story? This whole story is being relayed by, let's go back. So Cephalus begins this story in the text. He comes, he sees Adimantos in Athens. Hey, Adimantos is, hey buddy, how's it going? What's up? What are you here for? What do you need? He goes, I want to hear the story about Socrates and Zeno and Parmenides and their logos. Can you tell me that? He goes, we have to go to Antiphon because he knows it. Why? Because Antiphon was friends with Pythagoras and he was there. And these two like would repeat it all the time and make it a object of meditation. So Antiphon is telling us the story. And Cephalus and Adimantos is there listening to it. So Antiphon was messing around with horses with his granddad. Is it granddad? Yeah. So he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give this account of the Parmenides. Boo.
What in the heck are we talking about here?
He says, boo. Jarvis, are you there?
And I'm here to assist you with a variety of tasks as best I can.
Jarvis, you got the sound drop wrong twice in a row. What do you make of that?
For virtual artificial intelligence.
Yeah, well, intelligence is in your name. You should be more intelligent than that, okay?
Allow me to introduce myself. I am Jarvis.
All right, Jarvis, I know who you are. But please play the boo sound drop.
Importing all preferences from home interface.
Thank you, Jarvis.
Systems are now fully operational.
Yes, good job, Jarvis. So we asked him to give us the thing, and he said, boo, I didn't want to, it's too hard. But it can be fun. This has been fun. I think it's fun. I hope you find it fun too. But also high stakes, meaningful, all that sort of great stuff that makes it more interesting. It's a reality-based game, right? It's a game, but it's a fun game. It's a reality-based game. It says Parmenides. We play a reality-based game. The best game in town. So, last time we nailed down, what is our question? You can have understanding. You can understand things in the realm of becoming, which is the lesser. By the way, you can apply that understanding to the realm of being, which we call dianoia. Which is the logos that we're finding. And you can also apply that logos to the one self, which is the first hypothesis. So one question is, what does it mean to have an understanding or logos of the one self? Another question is, well, if we are to know thyself, what's it like to know thyself? Both of these. Logos. Nous. Understanding and knowing. Know thyself. Understand thyself. Have logos of thyself. Wouldn't this only refer to this? Wouldn't this only refer to this? We know knowing usually only refers to being. So one question is, what would it mean to know thyself? What would it mean to understand or have a logos of thyself? And finally, what's the significance of having a name of the self? Right? So we were saying naming, we're building a case. What does it mean to name? How important is it to name? Does it affect your vision, having the name? We talked about the right name for philosophy, the right name for idea, which means to behold being and not a concept. And that was Socrates' problem. It's what we're going through at the moment. What other names are important that we've seen so far? Usia is a name we don't have in English. We need to throw it in there. So there's some significance of names, and maybe that's why he put it in this order. Did he say name, then logos, and knowledge first in this order for a reason? So those are our questions. What would it mean to know thyself? What would it mean to have a logos of the oneself? What is the significance of having the right name for the self? And what is the name? And is one sufficient, or is there something else? Oneself? What is the right name? And what's the significance of having that name? So we did a little quick mini dialectic on name. I encourage you to do your own. You probably did much better than this one. This is just a quickie. We want to know what a name is. So what do? We want to know something. do a dialectic, which is a way of bringing together all of the understanding we have so far. Also, it's a way of collecting ourselves together, all of our logos together. That's what logos can do. So what is a name itself? Not sure, but what do we know about it? How does it function to others? It unifies, it collects together things, contains all of our understanding or logos. Given that, what do we want to do in relation to names? We want to name it well in the highest way, know thyself. Oh, Mr. Step, others to others. If we have a name, how can we use it with other people? We can communicate, we can dialectic, we can benefit. Given all those things, given all these things that we've brought to the surface in our mini dialectic, what do we want to do in relation to names? We want to name well in the highest way and understand how that's to do with knowing the subject. So, 3 big questions, but we have a bunch of little questions, such as here, we looked at this pattern, looking for patterns. In fact, that should be a skill tree. Pattern. I think that is what the skill tree is, pattern recognition. It's what all the skill trees are. If we can we look for a pair of lesser and greater to do with these 3, name, logos, knowledge? Because there is a unique way of understanding the greater in a way, this way here, that's the greater and that's the lesser. There's this section here where they are touched, but there's this section here where the lesser cannot touch this section here. Otherwise, it wouldn't be greater and lesser, they'd be equal if they completely overlapped. There must be something that the lesser can't touch, but it can't be here because this is the bottom, this is the lesser end. There's something of the higher end that makes it greater. Otherwise, it wouldn't be greater and lesser. The greater is defined by it having something different than the lesser, and that difference has to be more or higher or more causal or more up some sort of hierarchical ladder. Otherwise, it would be opposites. Like there's hot and cold. Maybe in here you call it warm. You have hot and cold. There's something here that hot can't touch, like ice. Something here that cold can't touch, like flame. But there's here like a nice warm bath. That's a mixture of hot and cold together, right? But you wouldn't say flame is greater than ice. It's not. That's a opposite pair. However, if we're talking about greater and lesser, which is one of our archetypal or higher, is the archetype for the triads, lesser, greater, ultimate, then we're not doing opposites, we're doing lesser and greater. Then this section here, which we called flame for hot, is actually something that's better than the section here. So if we can put our self for pairs, like whole and part, limit and unlimited, then one of them's going to be greater, one of them's going to be lesser. And this area where they overlap, you can't apply to the one self, but there is a way of applying this section that is defined by not being touched by the lesser. This section here that somehow can be applied to the one self, to the ultimate. So we have something like this. Maybe it's something like this. Dun, lesser, greater, ultimate. Lesser is to greater is to ultimate. So there's something of the greater that can touch the ultimate of the one self. Of course, there must be something of the ultimate that isn't touched by the greater, otherwise it would be the same as greater, or of equal value. Or if the greater can touch that and that, the greater would be greater than the ultimate. Because not only let's try that, the greater contains all of the ultimate, but it also contains some of the lesser. this was the greater. So you have the ultimate contained within the greater, which also can contain the lesser, which would make the greater greater than the ultimate. So you can't have that model. There has to be something of the ultimate, of the one self, that the logos touches. One self. Let's keep this. I like this diagram. So there must be something of the one self that the greater touches. Let's make it a different color. Let's go blue. Must be something of the greater that can touch. But there also has to be something that isn't touchable for it to be ultimate. So something of the one self can be touched by the logos or by knowledge. So long as you have knowledge or logos defined by that section that is not touchable by their self or pair. So what is that? Well, we've got two questions. What's this part and what's this part of the ultimate? Is one of them one of them self? Can you know one but not know the other? We've got 3, we've got name. Let's make that better. Name, logos, knowledge. Like that. So, what are our questions? Can we define knowledge in this way? Is there a part of knowledge that touches? Is there a logos that touches? Is there a name that touches? But it would have to be defined by the logos that is not this part of the knowledge, not this part of the logos, not this kind of naming. The kind of naming that can apply to the lesser or can be touched by the lesser cannot apply. So what's our example from the first hypothesis? Limit, unlimited, right? Unlimited. That is not a series of limits. So there's this limited and unlimited. We have examples counting space, but there is a part of unlimited that is not touchable by limits, but is simply unlimited. That's this section here. We also said different. There's a different that is not defined relative to the same, which would be this section here. Everything we see is some kind of same and different. I'm the same as you because we're both philosophers. I'm different because I live in a different place. I had a different breakfast. I'm a different height. So this is everything in the realm of becoming and being, everything in the realm of is. And we're saying all this stuff in the realm of is does not apply. It's the one that is not is. But we did say in the first hypothesis that the one self is simply different. Actually, so we've got that question. Another question is, so we've got question here. So what is the lesser self a pair to name, to logos, to knowledge? Also, we have another question here. Of the one self, what's this and what's this? So we have this question. What's that? What's that? So we got here, this one and this one. What are they? So that's at least 4 questions here. So let's weave it together. Let's look at one of the times where we did have that and see what it applied to. Let's bring up the text. Jarvis, bring up the text, please.
Importing all preferences from home interface.
And I actually don't want that text. I want the first hypothesis. Okay. There we go. So we looked for simply different. It was one of the 2 times where we were given a positive. 2 is enough for a pattern, enough to give us what we need to be put on our Sherlock Holmes cap and be an adventurer.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Right. You're a Sherlock Holmes, Harry. But on the one hand, surely it will not be other from another, relative to something, so long as and insofar as it is one. So it is one. So there is an is that can apply. Thankfully, our translator put it in inverted commas to point out, by the way, your goal is to find out what the heck this kind of is. What is? That's so cool. It's like a 3-word sentence to highlight one of the essential natures of the first hypothesis. 3 words. What is, and 2 of them is the same word. It's like, that's one of the amazing things about Parmenides and Socrates and Plato, about philosophy, is it's so precise. So efficient. Actually, let's bring up our quote. If you're of a good natural disposition, you can learn to define each of these ideas, but also you get more admiration if you help others to do what? Distinguish them in a sufficiently efficient way. What is so efficient. You're defining these particulars in such an efficient way. That's cool. I think that's rad. I say. Wow. Okay. It's not proper for the one to be other than anything, but simply other. The one is simply other. Okay. Wow. Maybe this answers one of our questions. What's one of our questions? If hypothesis, if it's a hypothesis, if this is a way of unlocking the logos, then we have a section of the greater that combines with the lesser. All of these are in the realm of exist or ousia, and also all of the other terms, participate, experience, and all the other ones all the other adjectives we have to unlock, including knowledge, including naming, including logos. So what's it like to name, what's it like to, and so on. Then we saw in the first hypothesis, there is a unique, simply other way of talking about this section that is the greater. It's not other than something. That would be here. But it can't be touched by anything lesser. That's how you distinguish it. I mean, there might be this middle section. I don't know if there is. Maybe. It doesn't really matter for our purposes here. But there is this section that is simply other that we can apply to the one self. And what did we just do? We looked at the text and we realized that he said, so our question was, well, if there is a one self and that's the ultimate, if this is a good model, then there is something that does get touched by that greater, but there is something that isn't touched by the greater. Otherwise, if the greater can touch all of the ultimate, it would be like this. You'd have lesser, greater, ultimate, but the ultimate would be touched by all of the greater, which means the greater would contain the ultimate, and be touched, that's more. That would make the greater better than the ultimate because it contains the ultimate and it's touched by the lesser. So you can't say that because it wouldn't be greater. It would be ultimate. So the ultimate can't be completely contained within the greater. So we can reject that model. Which means what? It means there's something here that isn't touched by the greater. So there is a way of applying. You can't apply this, of course. That's the first hypothesis. But there's a puzzle about this part here. So our question is, what are the parts of the one self that is by definition not having parts? By definition, it's like that was our first argument. It doesn't have parts. The parts would be many. So what's this and what's this? We looked at the text and the text showed us, by the way, that simply other is applied to the one. Is this a clue? Let's keep reading. It can't be other from another so long as it is one, for it's not proper for the one to be other than anything but simply other, but not in any way other from the other. So, you can't even say it's other than the other, but it is simply other. The one is, so let's highlight that. That's a key significant thing. Put it in pink. Properly so. Thus, on the one hand, it will be other since it is one. Oh, it is one. Wait, it will not be other since it is one. Ooh. So on one hand, it is simply is, but on the other hand, it's not other, so long as we're defining other from another or other from itself. Okay. But surely, if not by this reason, then it will not be other from itself. But if self... Okay, so then it goes on. So, maybe this answers our question. What's this question? Maybe this part here refers to the one, just using that hypothesis. Maybe this part is the one, and this part is the self. Possibly, but in a unique way where you can't have parts. There has to be something. All right, let's go to the other example where he gave us a positive. Let's fill in. Let's fill in oneself, oneself, oneself. Okay. These are three questions from the end. Also, we have this fourth question here. What's the self a paired name to logos to knowledge, such that we can deny it in the way it has been denied at the end of the first hypothesis, but then use it in a unique way. So let's go back to the text and find the other place where he gave a positive to see whether he applied it to the one and not the self, which would give us a loose hypothesis to put in our inventory to take with us as we go through the rest of the text to see maybe we can define this as the one part of the one self and this is the self part of the self, while keeping in mind they're not really parts, but there has to be a new way of understanding that. Allowing us to say, this cannot have a name, this cannot have knowledge, this cannot have logos, but this part can. Maybe. Hypothesis. Okay, let's see. Let's go back to the text. So we were looking at unlimited. Thankfully we have this one. Hence, is it not the case that if it can have no part, then neither can it have a beginning? Neither can it have a beginning, nor middle, nor end. For those such as these would already be parts. Okay, can't have parts. Which adds a wrinkle to our question, what is the part of the ultimate that can be touched by logos, knowledge, and name? Rightly so, and certainly the beginning and end are indeed the limit of each part. How could it not? Accordingly then, the one is unlimited if it has neither, that's neither beginning nor end. The one is unlimited. We have a second time in which, because there's two ways of going, keep in mind, in a dialectic. In this kind of a dialectic, you have two terms. You can say things about the one and apply it to the self. For example, the one is not many, right? So therefore the one can't have parts. Therefore the self can't have parts. So using an understanding of the one applied to the self. Equally so, you can make something that you understand about the self and apply it to the one. You can't be the same as another, because then you wouldn't be yourself. That's what it means to be yourself, is you're not the same as someone else. So therefore, the one can't be same as another. You can go both ways, and you smush them together and you have the one self of the first hypothesis. Thank you, Parmenides. And thank you, Antiphon, for remembering it. Thank you for Cephalus for asking to hear it. And thank you for Plato for recording it. So, maybe we've seen something. Maybe we've leveled up in a way. This is a cool insight, maybe, at least as an hypothesis. Which brings up more questions. How can you say there's a part in this way? Does that mean that in this ultimate realm, this realm of oneself, there is another level? So we got the realm of, let's go yellow. So we've got the realm of, the lesser realm of, what's going on? Of becoming, the realm of being, the ultimate of one, and then the super ultimate of the self. Therefore, there's a way of talking about this as the one self, but there's a hidden question within this, a hidden puzzle that says, by the way, that's the one, that's the self. You can call it the one self, but there is a higher level. There is this ultimate that is untouchable or incommensurate with even that. So maybe there's a higher level. Is there a higher level than the one that pertains to the self? That would be a hidden, mysterious question. That's like if the game is to you're playing a video game. The game is to defeat the Umbrella Corporation and kill the final boss. Right? That's finding the one self. That's the explicit goal of the game. But in the game, you might realize that even the Umbrella Corporation is a hidden, contains within it a hidden secret. That the Umbrella Corporation is actually a front. It's actually run by aliens. The whole guise of there being an evil capitalist bioengineer military-industrial complex company just creating bioweapons is just a front. Is a lesser evil to the greater evil of the aliens. So there's a hidden second question that you can discover if you play the game in a certain way and you unlock the hidden secret and you discover there's a hidden key. There's one key, but there's a hidden one somewhere else. All right, that would be a kick-ass game or movie or a Christopher Nolan movie. I use Christopher Nolan because he writes some of his movies like that, which I really like. But is there such a question here? Is this another question? Maybe. So this question here actually has two questions. So we've got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. What are they? What's the self paired to knowledge? What's the self paired to logos? What's the self paired to name? Such that we can define this area against its pair, the greater that cannot be lesser, the ultimate that can't be, the unlimited that can't have limits, the other that can't be other than anything. So there's those 3 questions. And also, one question is, what then is this? And then the implications of that. Are there 2 sections? Is this? So the question is this a good model? Make it. Is this a good model for the ultimate? In which case, what are those 2 parts? And what are the implications that follow? So there's at least 5 questions we are carrying with us in our back pocket. Wow, hasn't the text opened up? Hasn't it blossomed like a flower for us? What do you say, Owen?
Wow. 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 Wow.
I agree. So, let's take that back and get back to where we left off, like I think 2 sessions ago. Okay? We're weaving it together. This is what happens when you use the sewing needle of infinite truths. Let's pick it up. We're back to Parmenides talking with young Socrates. Wow. Isn't this cool? Socrates is called the father of Western thought. Everything since Socrates is but a footnote to Socrates. That's 2 famous quotes about him. It's acknowledged that, his books, like the books about him, like The Republic, are recognized as like top 10 greatest books ever written. But it's also the most misunderstood. Often the Republic is treated as a political text when it's explicitly said it's not a political text. Several times he says, this isn't a political text. It's a metaphor for spirituality, for this. How can we know being of justice? So even now we can acknowledge that Socrates is brilliant while acknowledging we don't really know his brilliance. We don't see it yet. We can acknowledge that he is some sort of super genius while acknowledging we're not there yet, which is cool, which is admirable about us as a species. Of course, there are people who dismiss him because they like to pretend to be the knower, and it's easier to dismiss something and sound smart than it is to do this kind of work and swim through such a great sea of logos that even Antiphon and Parmenides himself says, I don't want to do that, that's a lot of work. What are you asking me for? Right, so we can understand why it's appealing to just dismiss it. But there are many who don't, and that's admirable, I think. So, hey, I realize that this guy's a genius. I realize I don't see it yet. But we are doing the work to see it, and it's blossoming in front of us. It's a multi-layered Christopher Nolan film or a kick-ass video game with an awesome story. It's opening up for us if we're doing the work. So, this is Socrates, like, acknowledged in those sorts of ways. And we're seeing him at the beginning of his journey. We're seeing him as a kid. We're seeing him accept his first quests. And we're seeing him struggle in the same way we struggle. We're literally sitting in on one of the first conversations philosophically that one of the greatest minds ever has had. With one of the greatest minds ever in Parmenides. Isn't that cool? If you're a filmmaker, make a film about this. Please, make a game about this. Oh, so cool. All right, and let's go back to that conversation. Parmenides says, hey, by the way, this is your way of thinking. Let's see what happens. Okay, selfhood of the servant. Every class of self is somehow unknown to us to be that which it is indeed by means of the idea, the beholding, of the knowledge of the self. Yes. Which ideal real being we do not possess ourselves. We do not. Accordingly then, not a single one of the ideas are known by us, if this is how you think. Seeing as we do not participate in self-knowledge, we do not participate in that. We can't connect with them. Does not seem likely. Therefore, the beautiful self, the good self, and all the selves which we have surely taken up as being ideas, and the subjects of our dialectics, are also unknown by us. Therefore, the dialectics are empty talk. I'm afraid they are. Behold then, an even more fearful consequence. What is it? You will say perhaps that if indeed there is a certain class of knowledge, then self is much more perfect than the knowledge which exists among us. Hey, that knowledge is more perfect than ours. And the same goes for beauty and all the other ideas. Of course. Yes. Is it not the case that if indeed anyone partakes of self-knowledge, then you will not affirm that anyone possesses that most perfect knowledge more than God? If there is a true self-knowledge, then no one has it better than God. Necessarily not. Take notice then. Is it possible, in turn, that God can know our affairs by possessing self-knowledge? If he has the ideal of all knowledge, does he know about what we're doing up in here? Why not? It's God. Why not? Since it has been agreed to us, O Socrates, that neither do those ideas have the power which they possess in relation to those among us, nor those among us in relation to those, but selves exist in relation to the selves in each realm. They have knowledge about themselves, we have our less perfect knowledge about ourselves, and they're not connected. It was so agreed. That was my position. Is it, and the greatest puzzle, right? This is a great puzzle. The greatest human puzzle, says Parmenides earlier. Is it not so? Actually, let's nail down this great puzzle because we keep coming back to it. We need it as a quote. You don't grasp how great the puzzle is if you want to try and place each one idea of the real beings as being separated apart. If you want to do the dialectic. Okay. There are many puzzles. This is the greatest. Okay, let's add this to our quote list. Even if following the proof through many elaborate details from one practiced and experienced and with natural talent, even then he who contends that the idea selves are unknowable may still remain unpersuaded. Bingo, bango, bongo. What do you say, Owen?
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Helps us to recognize the situation we're in. Okay, also helps us to recognize the situation Socrates is in and why Parmenides is using his natural talent and his experience and practice to go through a long, elaborate detail of explaining this master-slave analogy.